a very different looking Kansas Jayhawks team this year. But you know what, Missouri fans, be careful what you wish for.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso, and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And it's never too early to get started on at least the quarterbacks for 2027. And Missouri already has a verbal commitment there, plus another entry into the portal reportedly for the Tigers. Also is Darryn Peterson, one of the presumed top 2 or 3 overall picks in the NBA draft this summer. Is he going to play in Kansas City against the Tigers? Let's talk about all the angles of the Missouri-Kansas game coming up. Real quickly, I do want to remind you, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. And you know what? I got to be honest with all of you on the Missouri side. I just don't think that this Missouri basketball team is all that good. I feel like I need to emphasize that because, and here's what I mean by not all that good. I just don't think this is a tournament team or even a team that's going to be on the bubble necessarily at the end of the season. Hopefully they're going to prove me wrong on Sunday. But I got to say I was really discouraged by the second half in particular by Missouri offensively, because if this team isn't going to be able to consistently score at a pretty high level, again, I just don't think they're going to be able to make up for it at the other end. Not only because, well, I don't love how Missouri structures its defense, but quite simply, I just don't think they have the horses to be a great defensive team and a great offensive team at the same time. You're going to have to make choices there if you're Dennis Gates. And clearly, well, he leans on the offense and gambling on defense. But the thing is, again, hopefully the Tigers prove me wrong in Kansas City on Sunday. But let's just say this. Kansas -2.5 over at FanDuel Sportsbook, by the way. Tigers plus 132 on the money line if you want to take Missouri to win. I just cannot see touching that at all. But if you want to start getting optimistic or at least happy, hey, DaJuan Harris is gone. I'm glad to see the Columbia native is finally out of here. Hunter Dickinson as well, one of the least likable Kansas players in a long time, and that's really saying something. But before you celebrate too much, and I had to stop myself because maybe I should be careful what I wish for, because I was talking to Derek Johnson over at Locked On Jayhawks this morning, asked how he was feeling about this Kansas team. And again, a very much a new look kind of Kansas team this year. Lots of transfers, lots of true freshmen on this team as well, including the ballyhooed Darryn Peterson. But Johnson says, good, they're so much more enjoyable and athletic than the last 2 teams and play much harder. Just sucks with Peterson hurt because they're not the most talented team without him. I was basically going on to give the spiel I just gave at the beginning of the episode here, saying I'm not a huge believer in this Missouri team at the moment. Well, you know what? Derek kind of, he gave a more optimistic take, at least for a Missouri fan than I think I was. He said, if y'all shoot well, you can win because Kansas's shooting is really bad. And that's where Peterson not playing is killing him. And again, Peterson has been out since, I believe, the North Carolina game on November 7th. And while Kansas has lost its 3 most prominent games last night, and actually not last night, this Tuesday, in fact, at Allen Fieldhouse, they lost to a top 10 team in Connecticut. They've lost to Duke, and they lost to North Carolina. But also with some impressive wins. One over Tennessee, who's a top 25 team. Borderline top 15 team, I would say. Got a neutral site win over them. They did beat Notre Dame, by the way, by 10. That's something that Missouri can't say. Of course, Missouri played in South Bend. Notre Dame and Kansas played in that goofy MGM Grand Players Era tournament. So different circumstances there. But it does give you an idea that, again, this is not the greatest Kansas team of the Bill Self era. That's pretty obvious at this point, especially without Darryn Peterson. Once again, Peterson, by the way, is a shooting guard, a wing that is a very high-level shooter, and such a high-level player, in fact, that he may be, just as a pure shooting guard, I mean, he might be the biggest prospect at that particular position in the NBA since, gosh, going back maybe to Vince Carter, somebody like that. I mean, really, at that particular position, it's been a while. So he's a really interesting player. And considering he's been out for about a month now with a hamstring injury, it would almost be surprising if he came back against Missouri. There was thought that maybe he would come back against Connecticut. I would just think that, honestly, if you're a Missouri fan, I'd almost hope Darryn Peterson does come back, because after a month off, there's a really good chance that he's rusty and maybe doesn't completely fit back into what the Jayhawks are doing. Again, in game one back from injury, obviously Bill Self and the Hawks are going to want Peterson back for the rest of the season. I just think whatever early returns, though, could be a little bit volatile, is my point with Darryn Peterson, that's for sure. And by the way, I do think it's kind of funny that Trey White, by the way, we need to come up with an expression for this. Anytime a player like Trey White, again, another one of these newcomers for Kansas, anytime you play at 4 different Power 4 schools in your 4 seasons of college basketball or college football for that matter, I think we need a term for that. Maybe a frequent flyer, maybe a big fofo, something like that. Call back to Moses Malone back in the day. But to go from to USC to Louisville to Illinois, by the way, and now Kansas, boy, keep getting them checks, Trey. And for you to be against Missouri in the bragging rights game, and now, well, the border war as well. You know what, Trey White, you are dead to me, sir. I have to say, nothing against the good people of Kansas City, Missouri, of course, but I really hate that this game is being played in KC this year. After Missouri got a win last season in Columbia, I mean, really, that felt like that was the moment that the rivalry was kind of officially back. It can't just be, well, Kansas beating down Missouri every season. That's not what makes a rivalry. So for the Tigers to win a spirited battle in Columbia last season, an absolutely electric Mizzou Arena crowd, the students and the crowd rushes the court. I mean, frankly, a return to Allen Fieldhouse this year would have been something to see, for sure. But to have it in KC, it's just not quite the same. Don't get me wrong, that split crowd, I'm sure it'll be a great atmosphere, but considering that we're going to have it the next 2 seasons in Kansas City, then presumably I got to assume this either has or will be renewed. But okay, so then presumably it'll be in Lawrence the next season. That means it'll be a full 4 years since that pretty monumental victory. At least it felt pretty monumental at the time. And that's part of the problem, I think, right now with this rivalry, is that there doesn't seem like there's very much juice for it right now, considering it's 2 days away. I don't feel like I've had a lot of topics, a lot of barstool conversations about, Missouri and Kansas basketball so far this season. And I think a lot of that just has to do with timing, and this game being played in December, right at the tail end of college football season for Missouri. Of course, the bowl hasn't even been announced yet. I mean, football is still very much at the front and center of most people's minds. So to me, I think it would make an enormous difference, not only just to keep this game on campus exclusively, but also move it to February or maybe January for that matter. Regardless, February, March, something like that. And by the way, this is not unheard of. Of course, there are plenty of non-conference games throughout the years that have been played in February. You can work with the SEC in scheduling, especially for a game like this. To me, this is a real missed opportunity and kind of a mistake to play this game in Kansas City, in my opinion, because frankly, when Missouri and Kansas played in football in Kansas City, well, the returns were diminishing there. And I'm not saying this game won't sell out consistently or anything like that. I'm sure it will. Obviously, in terms of interest, well, Kansas basketball is no comparison to Kansas football. Obviously, a much smaller arena to fill. But again, just buzz-wise, I just think these games work so much better on campus. But I don't know. Perhaps reasonable people can disagree on this one. And the transfer portal window officially opens here in a few weeks, but reports already out there. Another entry into the portal will be coming for the Missouri Tigers. And also Eli Drinkwitz talking about revenue sharing, how his team is going to have to, not only his team, but other teams throughout the college football landscape are going to have to budget this time around. Well, maybe giving us a clue about something, and also why clearly it's going to be very advantageous for Missouri if one of the quarterbacks they already have, in particular Matt Zollers, can be the guy next season. So let's talk about that here in just a little bit. But first, yes, the holidays are almost here, and that means it is gift hunting season. And I got something great for you. Once again, I am going to solve these problems for you. Well, actually, Aura Frames is the gift that keeps giving every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's something that you share memories with, because Aura isn't just your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it. So when your recipient, well, when they plug it in, the memories are already there. There's no apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. So if you're giving this to somebody who isn't that tech savvy, well, guess what? You're not giving them a homework assignment. You're actually giving them a gift. So for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That is AURA frames.com. Promo code COLLEGE. This deal's exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. And Missouri freshman running back Brendan Haygood has entered, or is going to enter reportedly, the transfer portal this offseason. And quite frankly, tough to blame him for that, considering looks like Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts likely back again for Missouri next season. Another freshman running back, Marquise Davis, he's the one I'd be wanting to watch here this offseason. A guy who's very talented, obviously, but not much of a obvious path to playing time this season. If Hardy and Roberts return for the Tigers in 2026. So Marquise Davis, let's see if he comes back or not. I frankly hope he does. I hope he shows that amount of patience. I don't really want Missouri to be using any of its budget on a running back this offseason one way or the other. And indeed, at this point, people like Eli Drinkwitz are openly talking about how there is more of a budget this season. Now, of course, in reality, there's always a budget, but you know what I'm saying. In terms of there's actually a revenue sharing model now, and, well, limits on what you can spend there. And in fact, Eli Drinkwitz says specifically, he was talking about, hey, his high school class here, and maybe obviously kind of confirming something I've suspected for a few months here, which is Missouri has made a shift in strategy and a shift in budgeting strategy, which is more toward the transfer portal versus highly ranked high school players. And in particular, he was talking about how this Missouri high school class, well, it was later to come together than in any other previous year under his tenure at Missouri. And he says, for us, I think we've always talked about production over potential. And when you're investing money in a product, you want to see that product's senior tape. You want to see the most recent film. Because can you imagine if the NFL drafted its players a year before they signed? So they think about this. What if everybody was drafted? Think about that. Quarterbacks in the SEC, they were drafted in June last year. Then they played their senior years and then went to the NFL for their rookie year. Everybody would be shocked. So why would we do that? Basically, Drinkwitz there is pointing out that, hey, for years the trend has been, well, hey, let's obviously sign high school players as early as we can. I think really what he's kind of getting to there is the guys that you have to sign as early as possible, well, they tend to cost the most money. So is that a great return on investment? Clearly, Drinkwitz doesn't think so, and I'm inclined to certainly agree with him there. Now, ironically, though, Missouri did just sign a 2027 quarterback. That was announced right about the time of signing day for the 26 class. Well, Braylen Warren, a 6'1", 200-pound quarterback from Omaha, Nebraska, had Kansas State, Wisconsin, Iowa, and others after him. Well, obviously, hey, at the quarterback position, it's funny that Drinkwitz used that example of, well, hey, could you imagine if these quarterbacks got drafted a year before they actually went to the league? Well, you are still going to have to do that, even at the 3-star level as Braylen Warren is. He's not an elite prospect at the moment. We'll see where he ends up here in a year or so, but you still have to get in early on these quarterbacks. So while the dynamic may have changed somewhat, Missouri may feel like they can wait some of these players out at other positions. Obviously, the need to jump on high school quarterbacks, well, that hasn't seemed to have changed at all. And on that Missouri quarterback position, one of my YouTube commenters here, why, says, I love the bet on Zollers. He is the future. Well, I hope you're right. That's all I'll say. I still have a lot of hope for Matt Zollers. I'll just say this. If you're right, if Zollers is the guy next season, as early as next season, for example, if Missouri has enough faith in that, well, that's another variable, because how much money does Missouri have to actually spend on a portal quarterback this offseason? Obviously, it'd be nice if they didn't have to spend any money on a quarterback this offseason, and you could obviously take those resources and put them towards other positions like offensive line and wide receiver, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. Looking like Missouri is decent chance they're going to have to replace a couple NFL quality pass rushers on the defensive side of the ball too. And, well, Drinkwitz, I think, kind of accidentally let the cat out of the bag, saying that, hey, we'll be looking for a couple corners this offseason. He said, I mean players, or he corrected himself, but clearly it wouldn't be a huge shock with Missouri. Its top 3 corners, I believe, are exhausting their eligibility this offseason. So that's an obvious place that Missouri is going to look, whether Drink actually let the cat out of the bag or not. But again, if Matt Zollers is ready to go next season, heck, if Bo Prabula is ready to go next season, again, now all of a sudden you're looking at taking some money that would have been used in the portal. Well, now you can put it elsewhere. But the question is, does Missouri and Eli Drinkwitz have that kind of faith in their current quarterback room? That's the question. That's a tough one to answer. You know, with the past couple years under the 12-team college football playoff, I've assumed that 10-2 would get Missouri into the thing. But you know what? After looking at Vanderbilt this season, they're going to be almost certainly on the outside looking in with an SEC record of 10-2. So is it time to reevaluate that? Well, perhaps not, considering another variable is changing next season as well. So let's talk about that and the college football playoff field here coming up in just a second. But you know what? I got to tell you, FanDuel is the place to be on NFL Sundays. It really is, especially when you've got live bets going. And with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, of course. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And you know what? I don't have any huge NFL takes right off the top of my head, but once again, Missouri, a 2.5-point underdog against KU. I just can't get there. You got to stay away, guys. Just trust me. Let's just stay away from Missouri and Kansas for this week. But regardless, you got to, if you think I'm wrong or you have some other angle, you want to get in on the action this season with FanDuel and place all of your bets, and especially your NFL live bets all season long. It is FanDuel. The game moves fast, and so can you. So once again, to recap, I've seen some people say, hey, maybe we need to rethink this 10-2 milestone as far as, hey, 10 wins should get Missouri into the playoff most seasons. Well, maybe this season, maybe that was the case. Maybe. I'm not even sure it's the case for this season, because if you think about it, okay, Missouri obviously went 8-4. Let's just say for the sake of discussion, they hit that Hail Mary at the end of the ball game against Vanderbilt. They go for 2 and they win the game. But that would require one more victory for Missouri as well. So maybe you give them somehow they win the game in Norman against Oklahoma. That's a pretty strong resume enhancer right there. Maybe you give them the Alabama victory at home. Again, another really strong resume enhancer there. But if Missouri still would have gotten blown out by Texas A&M, hey, maybe 10-2 isn't good enough. I can certainly see that scenario. But moving forward here, more importantly, again, with Oklahoma, I actually think, to be honest with you, I think Vanderbilt is the more scary team right now. I think they'd be the more difficult team to play. I think they're playing better football overall with Diego Pavia at quarterback and that Sooners offense struggling a little bit. But you know what? Considering Oklahoma's schedule, which everyone agreed this offseason was brutality, well, you go 10-2 against that schedule. I mean, it's hard to say you don't deserve to get in. And I think that's going to be the case moving forward with Missouri as well. You look at their 2026 schedule, and again, the variable here that changes this is now the SEC going to 9 conference games. Well, next season, Missouri gets the happy end of the home and away split. They have 5 at home, 4 on the road. Those 4 on the road, let's say Missouri loses 2 and wins 2 on the road. Well, they lose, let's say, to Ole Miss and Georgia. That's a fairly realistic outcome. Well, to then go 10-2, Missouri would have to sweep those 5 home games in the SEC. Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M, Florida, and Kentucky. Other than Kentucky, I mean, Florida could bounce back next season. Obviously, those first 3 teams I listed are all either in the college football playoff or, in Texas's case, just on the outside looking in. You sweep that schedule at home, how do you keep Missouri out? Again, that would be a nearly Oklahoma-like gauntlet. And then for 27, I mean, it's even more obvious. If Missouri goes 10-2 with a 5-game SEC road schedule that includes Alabama, LSU, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and South Carolina, you're telling me with that schedule that Missouri wouldn't deserve to be in the freaking field of 12? I just don't think a 10-2 is going to be that big of a problem. Again, in the future with these 9-game SEC schedules. And when it comes to this season's college football playoff, well, of course, the Indiana and Ohio State game, for example, obviously for a Big Ten title, obviously seeding is going to be important there to some extent. But when it comes to the field, really the Big 12 title game's the only real one to watch. If BYU upsets Texas Tech, well, then they will be in the field. And I think Texas Tech obviously will still deserve to be in as well. However, if BYU loses, they're out. So what does that mean? It means if BYU pulls the upset, that maybe means that the Notre Dame Fighting Irish get knocked out. Or perhaps another team, maybe Alabama, for example, if they lose in maybe blowout type fashion to Georgia, for example. So that could happen. But other than that, not going to be a whole lot of drama here in going on here necessarily in CFP or championship weekend, I should say. The one thing I will say, I got to say, the more I look at the brackets here and just think about how it felt like the playoff, at least in the inaugural 12-team season last year, I know I wasn't alone in thinking this, but it just felt like it dragged on a little bit long. And I think one of the reasons for that, I think the quarterfinal games should be on campus. I really do. Not just the first round games. I think the quarter final game should be on campus too. Not only because I think if you're a 1 through 4 seed, that's great that you get a bye. I think you deserve that on campus playoff game, just like those first round teams got who are ranked below you, by the way. But on top of that, I just think that It's just better. Like, forget about the bowls. Obviously, nobody cares about the bowl system anymore, so forget about figuring in the Orange Bowl and the Peach Bowl and all of this nonsense. Just play the games on campus. In the NFL, by the way, they play the Super Bowl. That's one round. They even play the semifinals are obviously in NFL stadiums. To me, play those at least until the semis. You want to have the semis at the Rose Bowl, okay, whatever. But the quarterfinals, to me, play them on campus. You can tell this is a topic I'm on here lately, not just with Missouri and Kansas, but yes, the CFP, the quarterfinals too. Heck, even NCAA March Madness. I think the first couple rounds there, I think the attendance, the very sparse attendance, especially those early round games, I think you could argue even those could be moved on campus as well. The problem with that is obviously, hey, that's going to tamp down the amount of upsets almost certainly. But I just got to say, for as much as we love the tip-off of March Madness on Thursday at 11:15 a.m., usually those games are about 25% full in the arena. It'd be nice to have a little bit more energy there. That's just me. But you tell me all of your thoughts, of course, and thanks as always for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen, and thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network out there. And you know what? I will see you all Sunday after the Missouri KU game right here on Locked On Mizzou.